have William Bond here. William is the permaculture consultant. If you're curious about permaculture, want to talk to him about permaculture on your place, he's got a booth. I don't know where your booth is at.
No, I've been wandering around.
Okay, well just hit him up, because he'll talk to anybody, like literally anybody. And then next to him we have Jason. Jason Sparks is actually he started Kentucky Sustainable Living. Get kind of sucked into that and it grows on you.
It's like mold.
Like mold, yeah. But Jason and I.
You guys are getting a low battery on this.
Yeah, there's only 10% battery left.
So we need Joe Apple.
Well, we're just gonna have to go with it.
Okay. So Jason and I are the ones who organized the festival here. But recently.
Can we use the phone?
Yeah. If it won't fit in that crate, that's all bad.
So recently, Jason and William went to Eastern Tennessee and then on into Western North Carolina. You did that, right? They were both working with Grindstone Ministries. If any of you all are familiar with Bear Independent, Bear from the internet, he is, right, yeah, we like Bear. He's the one that is over Grindstone Ministries. So he has a team working out there. They went out there for roughly a week. You might have been out there a little bit longer, maybe.
Like overall, like 2 weeks.
Yeah, because William's parents, Billy and Michelle Bond, live in Western North Carolina, so they're kind of out there in the thick of it. But yeah, so they're here to tell you about their experience out there, let you know what was really going on out there, still is going on out there. If you have any questions about any of that, more than happy to answer your questions, and I'll give it to them.
Thank you, Shelley.
Bill, you ready?
You want to kick it off, Jason?
Feel better?
Talk.
It's gonna hurt.
Alright, guys, I appreciate y'all coming. William and I, like Shelley said, we went out with Bear for the internet with Grindstone. I went out there, I got out there Monday, stayed until Sunday. We were in Jonesboro, Tennessee, which is right on pretty much the North Carolina, Tennessee line. I talked to TJ and I was like, hey, I can't get out there right now, but what do you need me to do before I get there? So I ended up running a lot of logistics stuff. He was like, see if we can get some Starlinks out there, see if we can get some satellite phones. I got a whole semi of stuff shipped out there. We sent a bunch of water out there. There's another company in town that's helping out bring supplies. And it was funny, people poured stuff out. They were pouring out. I had a guy, never met him before, he sent me a message on Facebook. And he was like, hey, I've got a semi that I own, let me know and I will take this stuff for you. And I was like, I can't pay you. He was like, I didn't ask you to pay. He was like, I've got the semi, give me the address. I was like, ooh. So I talked to him, we got the address taken care of. He loaded it up, drove out there, and he was like, hey, I'm like 15 minutes out. I was like, sweet. We unloaded him, it was just great. People poured supplies out. When I got out there, I got all the stuff delivered that I needed to get. I'll tell you, VacMaster, that makes the chamber sealers, they sent 5,000 pairs of nitrile gloves out there. I made a phone call. I was like, they need nitrile gloves bad, working and all this stuff. And the manager of the company, he called me back. He said, I've sent you everything we have in stock. He said, everything from the warehouse, 5,000 units. He said, they're coming here. I was like, I appreciate it. Signature Solar, which is sitting over here, they sent out 2 massive solar generators for people to use. So we used the solar generators out there because gas was kind of limited out there a lot, and actual generators were limited. So the solar generators were great. We didn't have to worry about fuel. Set the solar panels out, they were charging everything for you. It worked out perfect.
So on the solar chargers, the solar powered generators and stuff, almost every community was cooperative in this whole event except for Ubis. I reached out to them specifically to send out some solar generators. We were in contact before the whole event happened, and then as soon as the event happened, let them know that, hey, we needed some solar generators, and then they just stopped talking to me. So, like EcoFlow, Jackery, what was it?
Signature Solar.
Signature Solar.
Peyton, my sales guy is sitting over there, so if you want to talk to him, he was a stand-up guy. We had a little bit of friction right there, and I was like, I need to know, we need to get some stuff out here. It's like, let's do this. And he was like, I understand. He said, here's your order, the shipping, the tracking, and all of that. And it was taken care of right there.
Yeah. The only company that said no was Upes. OUPES. Or they didn't say no, they just stopped responding. So, yeah, there's that.
But, yeah, when I got out, I helped the first couple days. I was helping with the logistics. We had people that were pouring out, just giving stuff. And it wasn't trash. You see a lot of it now that people are like, stop sending clothes. We've got so many clothes we don't know what to do with. And I saw one lady, she was picking up like sweatshirts that were just stained. And I was like, that lady just cleaned her closet out and just threw a bunch of crap. But the stuff, TJ put out a call, and it's like every day it would be something else. We need X, Y, and Z. And then literally like 5 to 6 hours later, this stuff's showing up. And you're like, he put that out just a few hours later, and it's already gotten here. It's like, it's a miracle. One of the funny things, we were setting up, and it's called their FOB, the Forward Operating Base. It's where everybody was at. I was sitting upstairs with some of the guys. It was about 9 o'clock at night, and we started talking. We're like, we could use another 9 to 12 generators. And we kind of said a prayer about it. We're like, we could really use those right now. 45 minutes to an hour later, one of the admin girls came up with the guy behind her, and she's like, this guy wants to talk to y'all. And he's like, I just brought a dozen generators up. And everybody was like, goosebumps. I got goosebumps now talking about it. And they're like, God is in this place and listening, and he's getting everything you need. But people poured out. There were generators coming in, gasoline, propane. One day I was out doing something, I came back, and there was like 200 propane tanks sitting there. And I'm like, this is awesome. There was Jackery, it sent a bunch of stuff. There was a pallet of Jackery solar generators sitting there. William, tell us some of the stuff that you saw as far as logistics stuff. Because I mean, every day when you came in, there was more stuff.
Yeah, it was like what did Bear say? They were Amazon for the hill people. Yeah, they had anything you needed, everything you could possibly ask for. It was just a matter of getting it to these people. And like they still need stuff. Like we're still at a deficit of generators right now. Fuel is a constant just resource that people still need. Wood burning stoves would be nice. Greenhouses would be nice, not for growing food, but to dry out some of the firewood that we've been splitting and everything. Because we can get firewood dried in like a month or so using a greenhouse. Like a ton of medical supplies have showed up. Like I didn't know you could just send this type of medical stuff without like a doctor or something. But yeah, chainsaws coming out of everywhere. There was more than enough food, oxygen tanks, thanks to Chuck Peoples and his son. Like everything we needed just ended up showing at the perfect time. But mostly what I was doing, like I would see the logistics side at the beginning of the day, and then I would leave, and then I would see the increase at the end of the day. What my main job was the first time I was out there was on a recon team. So we were going out into these disaster areas, making contacts, figuring out what kind of teams we need to send out and stuff like that. And it's so much worse than what they're saying on the news. Entire communities are gone. In fact, I made a bullet point list of everything that's happening and that's not happening. First of all, we can start with the death count. The death count is a lot higher than 218 people. They've used 10,000 body bags so far. And those are the people that were just laying over the surface. A lot of the search and rescue people, like the cadaver dogs would go and mark entire areas And then they basically were saying like, hey, we can't spend the time that's required to go recover these people because we still have living people that need help, which is understandable, but those bodies are decomposing and they're ending up in the water system that is deemed clean to drink and clean to use now. So it's a flashback that they've been, the mining companies have been trying to get access to this land for the past 20 years. A lot of these people, this is multi-generational land, and there's no, even though they're living in a shack, there's no amount of money you can offer these people to get them to sell their land. So they have forcibly removed these people. If you are not aware of geoengineering, then check out, not a doctor, but Dane Wigington. If you go and look at his information and you still don't believe in geoengineering, you are intentionally ignorant. It's not even a question. They've been doing Operation Popeye in the Vietnam War. I remember in school we watched a documentary how they diverted this hurricane in Miami. It was made by Disney. They diverted this hurricane in Miami, and it created massive tornadoes in Kansas. This is a butterfly effect. So the best thing we can do to stop the geoengineering stuff is just to immediately stop it everywhere and then let nature come back into natural balance.
I watched a thing on Chernobyl. It just popped up. I think it was Dark 5. They do a bunch of videos, and it was talking about the 5 secrets of Chernobyl. After Chernobyl, there was the nuclear cloud going to Moscow, and they were going to have this big parade in Moscow. They sent their bombers up, seeded the clouds, and it rained down on Belarus, all the radioactive stuff, so they could still have their parade in Moscow. So if you don't believe it, just like William said, the geoengineering is a real thing.
Intentionally ignorant. Keep that in mind. Dubai makes it rain every 2 weeks just because they're billionaires, and it'd be nice if it rained in the desert every once in a while. So here's a bullet list of stuff that I've noticed while working out there. This is all stuff that's not hearsay, it's not rumor, it's all just stuff that I have witnessed. FEMA is not helping the rural areas. They go to the areas where they can be seen. So Asheville, that's the only FEMA disaster relief center in North Carolina. It's Asheville. And then there's multiple in Tennessee, even though North Carolina was hit way worse than Tennessee was. What they'll do in the rural areas in Asheville or in North Carolina, they'll drop off an inflatable tent and a case of water, and then they leave. And what's curious is that none of the locals touched the FEMA water. Like there was every day I went out to this one area outside of Burnsville, that same case of water was in this random field, and they didn't even drop it off close to anybody. They just like got as far as they thought was safe, dropped it, and it was tipped over. It wasn't even upright. It's like they just kicked it off the trailer and then just left. Yeah, as they were driving, they were like water bottles scattered. So Tennessee Department of Transportation is on the ball. They seem to be like working around the clock. Anytime you go to these bridges or any of these crappy road areas, they are working. North Carolina Department of Transportation is very hard to find. Now I understand that there was more disaster zones in North Carolina than Tennessee, but it doesn't make sense, like the lack of work that's going on in the entire disaster zone of North Carolina.
From what I saw, it's going to be the West Virginia Department of Transportation. A bunch of the coal miners had come down, and it was to get into Chimney Rock. There's West Virginia coal miners that brought their equipment, and I saw it on TikTok yesterday. They're like, we got the road built in there, and that's all these miners from West Virginia. So we can call it the West Virginia Department of Transportation now.
There you go. And the local, like all of the infrastructure work that has happened in these rural areas is 100% private groups that have come in to help, and the locals. It's 100% them. It's the same with these supply drops. It's 100% private donation and local work. Another interesting thing is that, okay, so the water is contaminated along these creeks and rivers. There were two that I know of. Remember, I'm only telling you what I have witnessed. There are two PVC manufacturing plants alongside, one alongside the Nolichucky River and another alongside the French Broad River.
See green, but I don't.
There was also a
Should be a school.
nuclear fuels facility. Nuclear fuels facility alongside the Nolichucky, right next to a PVC manufacturing plant, and they both got hit. This water is heavily contaminated.
But if you look at the mainstream media, and its quote in the article is deemed safe and did not take major damage.
Which is why black rubber boots are turning green, all the cadaver dogs are dying, and people are leaving the bugouts and not coming back because they are very, very sick.
6%.
But that's the water that they're trying to bring access to back to these communities, which is going to be about 4 to 6 months before they get power back on. We're going into winter, and it's going to be about 4 to 6 weeks before they get heavily contaminated water. If anybody remembers that Ohio train derailment earlier this year,
Consuming more than it's charging.
very similar chemical, and they seem to be almost following the same blueprint because at the bottom of each one of these hollers, as the wind blows, it starts at the bottom of these hollers and it starts pushing up and then over the ravine and then down the next holler and stuff like that. That's where they're putting the burn pits. And now remember, does everybody know who Bobby Spags is? Well, Bobby Spags was in Iraq, and actually he was all over, but he was telling me about these burn pits in Iraq and how all these people had negative side effects and have died from these burn pits in Iraq. They're mimicking the exact same thing in these hollers in North Carolina. You'll go over there, like they're burning insulation, they're burning mattresses, they're burning wood that is soaked in these PVC manufacturing chemicals. And you'll just see a pillar of black smoke as you drive by these, and it's just wafting through the what's left of these communities. An interesting thing with the North Carolina Department of Transportation is that the labor that they're using, when they are using labor, is 100% illegals. So I took note of it because it seems like it's a population that can start dying off and disappear without any of the locals start questioning what is happening with these people. Because if Jim Bob from the top of the ravine, if he is working on the North Carolina Department of Transportation and he's rebuilding these roads and he's getting sick from whatever he's exposed to, word's going to start traveling. But if you're using a batch of illegals that don't speak English, like they don't speak a single word of English, I tried, then they don't raise the question of what's going on. So yeah, locals are coming together. What's the next point? Private donations, the water is filthy.
Now, I was using a Geiger counter everywhere I went, and I didn't test anything that was positive the entire time I was there, but I also was not downstream of any of these contamination sites, of the nuclear contamination sites. Oh, also, another thing that washed up were barrels from Oak Ridge, which makes you think, like, okay, is it possible for it to wash from Oak Ridge to areas in Marshall and North Carolina, and Asheville? And it's not. It would have had to have gone downstream, hit a tributary back upstream, and then gone back downstream to hit these locations. So it makes you question, okay, are there deposit sites somewhere in these mountains in Asheville and in Tennessee? Because these barrels from Oak Ridge are showing up. So yeah, there's another thing that's going on there. Also, all of a sudden, overnight, vaccination spots popped up everywhere. The government can mobilize vaccinations almost immediately for almost everything, but they can't organize work to come out there and rebuild the infrastructure that's needed to keep these people alive during the winter. Nobody, like, they were actually kicked out of the Jonesboro location, the vaccination spot. They were there to vaccinate against tetanus, all kinds of crap. If tetanus was real, all farmers would be freaking dead. So there's that. There's fake NGOs, and there's actually one that I want to call out specifically. If anybody wants their information, just please let me know. I'll be calling it out openly right now. But, so me, this second trip when I went out there, me and this other guy, we called him Top because he was in the Marines, and I guess that was what the nickname was for him. We also had like 5 Johns. Okay, yeah, he was one of the 5 Johns, so we called him something else. He said, well, some people called me Top in the military, so that was his new name. We went out to a location in Tennessee called Elk Mills, which the reason I found this place is because I was at Home Depot, and there was a lady that came up to me and said, hey, are you bringing those generators? I had a load of generators. She said, "Are you bringing those generators to Elk Mills?" And I was like, "I haven't heard of Elk Mills, but give me all the information you can about Elk Mills." And then she started telling me about it. She said this was like a week ago, and she told me they're just now getting hot meals. Like, this is an area that's been largely untouched. They're just now getting hot meals. She was actually going out there with the Blackstone to cook some hot meals for these people. Also, she said, like, she was looking at my truck, which is a 2001 F-350 that Bear actually gave to me about a year ago. And she said, that's not going to fit. And I was like, okay. So, it fit. It worked. It was sketchy, but it worked.
Grease the sides a little bit.
Yeah, you know, you got some spare tires, so, you know, only 2 of them have to be on there. So I go back to the base. I tell Kyle, who's in charge of the base at the time, I say, hey, I just got information about Elk Mills. And then he sent me out with Top to go recon the area. Top was medic and comms guy, and I was just the human guy. So we go out to Elk Mills, and I meet a lady there who's a part of International Alliance of Community Chaplains. Her name is Tracy Elder. Came into contact with her, and they have a full-blown pull-behind generator that's hooked up to this trailer, which the trailer looks like one of those FEMA trailers with 3 office spaces on the inside of it. And then on the other side of it, they have this open-air tent that has all their supplies. And then on the other side of that, they have a completely brand-new poured concrete slab out there, which stuck out because around me is freaking disaster, but they have this brand new concrete slab out there. And I was kind of figuring out, like, how did they even bring a concrete truck through here? I barely fit. And then on the other side of them, they had like a sheriff, like a pull-behind sheriff office or something like that. And I'm talking to Tracy Elder, and she's letting me know that, yeah, this place, they have no volunteers coming through. All the volunteers that come in, they end up leaving the next day and stuff like that. They're not able to get any work done. I told her we're there for 2 specific things: build access, because we have a lot of equipment; build access for people who do not have access to the outside world; and we're here to cut down widow makers also, trees that are hanging over houses or could potentially kill somebody, because we have a team of climbing arborists with us as well, which are crazy guys. They're crazy. So I go back, and she has like a stack this thick of there's 400 people in this community. She has information on every single one of these people and what their exact needs are. So I go back to Kyle, tell him what we need, and then he sends me out with a team of about 14 people and 8 pieces of equipment the next day. We go out there, and I go to the trailer, I meet up with Tracy, which that was sketchy, getting those pieces of equipment in there. I go back and I start talking to Tracy, and I said, hey, I've got X amount of people, we brought this equipment, go ahead and give me the leads and we can get started working. Because it took us it's typically like an hour drive from where we were in Jonesboro, and it took us about 3 hours to get in there, just because it was, not good conditions. And she's like, yeah, let me have you guys sign this waiver first. And my first thought was like, well, we already signed a waiver from the Grindstone, and I just didn't have a good feeling about it. So I grabbed this pack of waivers and I bring it back to the guys, and as soon as I hold it up, there's 3 guys that are just shaking their head no. Like, the Holy Spirit hit us all and was like, this is not a sign, this is not something you guys should be signing. So we start going through the waiver, and at the last paragraph is basically, you agree to comply with whatever rules the International Alliance of Community Chaplains comes up with from here on out, for like the rest of your life, for the rest of existence. You have to agree with what we put out. So, at about the time we all decided that we're not signing this Faustian bargain, Tracy comes pulling up, and I did give Kyle a warning the day before. I was like, this woman's got an ego this big. So she comes pulling up, getting chauffeured by her cuck husband on the side-by-side. She comes hopping out, and she's clapping her hands like, where's my waivers? We need our waivers. Where's my waivers? And then I was like, well, we just decided none of us are going to be signing these waivers, but we're still going to continue to do work here. That information would be, needed. So if you can either work with us, or we're going to have to spend another day doing recon just so we can figure out what needs to be done. And she's under some weird delusion where she can't hear anything other than the fact that we're not signing these waivers. Like, she won't do another thing to help us until we get these waivers signed. And we're like, at this point, we're like, all right, woman, just shut up and go over there or something, because we're not signing the waivers, you're not going to help us. Just stop talking, please. She ends up going back to her office, and then she calls the deputy sheriff on us. And the deputy sheriff comes down, she goes and talks to Tracy real quick, and then comes over to us, and she's like, what's going on? And we're like, we don't understand. She's wanting us to sign these waivers. We're not going to sign these waivers. We're here to help people. Here's all the equipment we brought. We're not looters, we're not militia, we're just people trying to help. And the deputy sheriff ends up like loving us. And then she goes and talks to the state trooper that's over the disaster zone, Elk Mills, and he's like, yeah, she has no authority. She's a part of International Alliance of Community Chaplains. Like, she has just as much right. Actually, she had less right than Grindstone to be there. So, like, she should have been taking orders from us, I guess. I don't know. But, so then the deputy sheriff comes back from the state trooper, lets us know the information, then she goes back to Tracy, and she ends up just like running away from Tracy because Tracy won't stop talking about these freaking waivers. Over and over again, she just keeps bringing up these waivers. Later on, I find out the reason she's so fed up about these waivers, and like, why do you need our social security number to volunteer? Find out later. So find out later that Kyle said, he was the leader of Grindstone at the time, he said she's trying to bill for what's going on. She's trying to bill us, our volunteer work, for what we did in that area. So there was that. Also found out that Tracy was over-exaggerating about how much work was actually needed in the area because the locals largely knocked out all of the access and cut down all the window makers. All they needed was supply drops. They just needed a source to keep bringing in diesel, keep bringing in kerosene, keep bringing in snacks and stuff like that. The locals had done 99.9% of the work in that area. The reason these other volunteers keep leaving is because this Tracy Elder lady keeps running them off with this Faustian bargain that she wants everybody to sign. Also, the locals can't stand her being there because she keeps running off the help. The locals keep flattening their tires, keep siphoning off diesel, keep shutting off the generator. This massive generator is just to heat and cool this reptile. That's the only thing this generator is doing. She has all this infrastructure set up for herself. Meanwhile, there's a community that could have used her help weeks ago, but she keeps running off the help. So, the foundation is called International Alliance of Community Chaplains. Her name is Tracy Elder. Their address is 752 North State Street, Public Municipal Building, 147, Westerville, Ohio, 43082. Their phone number is 419-618-5174, and their email is chaplains@iaocc.net. If anybody would like to send them a kind email. There's that. But that is why the locals are so untrustworthy of people that come in. It's because people like her are coming in, setting up a base, calling it an emergency management site or center or something like that, and then they lay claim to this area, and then she's exaggerating about the work that's actually needed there so she can keep reign over her little fiefdom in that area and just keeps wreaking havoc. That's why these people are so untrustworthy, the people that come in. Also, there's fake NGOs that are coming in that are going up to the door and saying, hey, I'll rebuild your house, just give me whatever kind of down payment you can pay right now. They give them their last dime, and then those people never show back up again. For me and this other guy named Michael, who will be here tomorrow, and he can vouch for everything I just said. His name is Michael Marsh. He'll be here tomorrow. He'll be the guy with the beard and the TTs hanging from his pants. He straight up had to say to one guy, like, hey, if you held a gun to me right now, I still would not accept a dime. And then he was like, okay, well, in that case, I could use some diesel. Like, we're cold. We can use some diesel. Or if you have an extra generator, that'd be nice. Or if you have any, like, high-calorie snacks, that'd be nice, too. Stuff like that.
One of the things that I spent, and William was talking about as far as people trusting you and stuff like that, you had to build the trust. They're independent people in the Appalachian Mountains. Part of my
Appalachian.
In the mountains. So, but yeah, it was building trust. I spent a couple days. One of the boys was Taylor. He does custom wood furniture. He had lost his whole building and everything, every bit of his way to make a livelihood. TJ told me, he said this guy is like a 6th generation family here. He was like, go out here, help this guy, whatever he needs, take care of what he needs, because we have to build his trust to get everybody else to trust us. So I spent a whole day moving dirt with this guy. He was getting ready to build a new building. I was like, dude, whatever. I was like, you got us. We've got equipment. We brought the equipment out. Spent a day moving dirt, trying to get his place ready to build him a new building. And I'm like, whatever you need from us, come and find us. And he was like, man, he said, like, I'm gonna cook brisket for y'all one night. And I was like, great. I was like, but I'm leaving. I was like, I really wanted brisket. He did it after I left. But it was building the relationships because those people have been burned by FEMA. FEMA could care less about the actual people that are there.
I got more points on that.
Yeah,
too,
they just want to make a scene. It's like, hey, look, I'm with FEMA, and you get on CNN, and everything's great. But in the background, people, normal people like us sitting here are the ones that did the work out there.
Yeah. So one of the reconnaissance missions that we did was me, Michael, and Steven went out to the disaster relief center in Jonesboro, and we met the FEMA people there. 4 DEI hires, 3 of them couldn't be bothered to look up from their phone, and we're asking, hey, like, there's people in North Carolina who are about an hour from here. They're going to literally pass this place to go to the only FEMA disaster relief center in North Carolina, which was Asheville, which would have been about 3 hours from the way the roads that were left. That's the route they would take. It would have been like an hour normally, but it's 3 hours because of the roundabout way they had to go. And we asked them, we were like, hey, could they stop here in Tennessee instead of going all the way to Asheville? And they didn't know the answer, so they called their boss, and they got back with me and basically told me they could, but it's going to be too much paperwork, so just send them to Asheville. That's who we're dealing with. Also, they went to a community meeting, and they left the community meeting early because they had reached 8 hours for that day. These locals have been working nonstop from sun up to sundown trying to rebuild their communities, and these FEMA disaster relief people can't sit in a chair for more than 8 hours at a time. A couple quick other notes, and then we wanted to go over like what we learned from it, right? Yeah. Okay. So the 82nd and 101st were there, and they were supposedly ran out by the militia. The militia was already there and had gotten ran out by the locals before the 82nd or the 101st ever showed up. And I'm not blaming the individuals in those two, whatever you call them, 82nd or the 101st. I'm not blaming those guys because they were largely frustrated about the whole scenario that they were stuck in. I'm blaming whoever gave them orders. Also, the 82nd, hold on 1 second. The 82nd was there to cut down wood, like trees that were falling, but they didn't show up with a chainsaw or rigging equipment. They were borrowing the chainsaw, and they weren't allowed to rig at all.
So you're saying there were some militia people doing that?
So according to 3 different locals in 3 different areas that had no contact with each other whatsoever, the Cajun Army came in. Now, I didn't know about the Cajun Army before this, but they were claiming that the Cajun Army came in and they were trying to take over the supply points and stuff like that. My dad has a theory that it was not the Cajun Army because every experience that I've had with anybody from Louisiana has been very pleasant. Can't understand them half the time, but it's been very pleasant.
Cajun Navy was there strong.
So yeah, they for sure said it was not the Cajun Navy. It was 3 different sections, 3 different locations. Kept saying it was the Cajun Army. If anybody saw that video footage of that helicopter blowing down the supplies tent area, that was supposedly the Cajun Army. My dad is under the impression it was somebody there acting as if they were the Cajun Army and just kind of wreaking havoc because they were complete jerks. Every encounter anybody ever had with these people were just complete jerks, and they were overly branded. Like Cajun Army was on everything. So there was that. They supposedly got ran out by the militia, but the militia was there and had left before they ever even showed up. Am I missing anything, Jason? Oh yeah, there's constant planes and helicopters flying around overhead, but they don't have any supplies with them. It's like they're constantly doing recon just to see what's going on. They're not bringing any supplies with them.
How many times did our helicopter?
There were some crop dusters from North Nebraska that had to lie about where they were going to even get to our headquarters to help out.
They would constantly get grounded. The teams would come back and they're like, we've got this, this, and this. We had all the equipment, supplies, and everything that we could load in there, and they would have to get authorization to take off and land. And they called him the flight boss at the airport. He was like, no, you can't do it. And they're like, nobody's in the area. And he's like, you can't do it. So it was a hindrance with that. It's like, we've got the stuff, we've got the manpower and supplies to do it, but they will not let you go do it. It's like, what's the difference? There's no rhyme or reason.
There's certain areas, like one area, Little Germany. So if you find Little Germany on a map, it's next to Jonesboro, Tennessee. If you find Little Germany, it was a community that was completely cut off. If you start looking up to the southeast into the mountains on Google Maps or something like that, you'll notice that there's a location up there that's completely cleared off up on the mountain. has those vent pipes coming up from it, and then you'll see road going, kind of disappears, and then you'll see another road that kind of disappears. Now keep in mind, Little Germany was completely cut off from everybody, but 4 black SUVs came flying through Little Germany at one point, and they went up into the mountains, and everybody was like, what the heck was that? How'd they even get here? So, I don't know what that site is. It's a curious site. That's one of the no-fly zones. Yeah, so there's that. Also, keep in mind that the government cannot mobilize anybody to start helping these people, but they could mobilize almost 4,000 workers to rebuild the railroad going into Spruce Pine. Spruce Pine is one of the locations that has the highest quality and highest quantity quartz in the world. So this is where my opinion and my assumption starts taking over. Got kicked out of Afghanistan, or we left Afghanistan, and the BRICS nations are forming. That cuts off lithium, that cuts off cobalt, that cuts off quartz with cheap labor. Those mountains they've been trying to get access to for the past 20 years to get the lithium and the cobalt out of those mountains. Now they're going to strip mine them. That's a whole nother story. They're going to have access to lithium and cobalt in those mountains, as well as the quartz out of Spruce Pine. There was a lithium plant somewhere nearby that's been out of commission basically since we've been in Afghanistan, because it was cheaper to come from Afghanistan with slave labor than it was to pay living wages up here in North Carolina. That's getting revamped, restarted. I think this was one big land grab. I think they amplified this hurricane. I think they killed a lot of people and did a lot of damage with this first round of attack. A lot of these houses are condemned. They have not told the locals, but they'll show up with bulldozers in a few months and knock down all these houses because they're completely contaminated. And then they're going to use a product like EM1 to get rid of the decontamination. They won't admit it's EM1, but they'll come back through and start mining. They'll start strip mining these mountains. So if they didn't die from the hurricane, then they're going to die from the contamination. And if they didn't die from the contamination, they're going to die from these mysterious vaccines that showed up overnight. So, what did we learn, Jason?
Well, first, and most everybody here, probably first thing, don't trust the government.
Yeah.
If you do, we need to have a conversation, sidebar on that. But one of the big things, and we've kind of touched on it, the big three, and in the preparedness community, if it's not sexy, nobody does it, or they do it halfway. We've got ARs over there; those are sexy. Everybody wants to get a new Gucci AR, but instead of buying that Gucci AR, let's take that money, let's get some way to generate power. Let's get on top of medical supplies, and let's get on top of communications. And if you're here today, well, that's a given for sure. Water. But yeah, those are the three things that I saw. Without power generation, without communications, without medical stuff, you're done for. We've got people here, and it's not a sales pitch, no kidding. We've got all that stuff here. Go talk to those people and get educated. You don't have to buy it from these people, but get some education and think about that. Even with as long as I've done preparedness stuff, I felt behind the curve. I'm like, a lot of these people, 6 months, 8 months without power, 4 months without water, that's a long time. A lot of us are kind of prepared, if we get a weak ice storm or something like that, we can run, we've got our 20 gallons or 30 gallons of gasoline to run our generator. Do you have 1,000 gallons of gasoline to run your generator for 8 months? Do you have another way to do it? Solar. Once you put your solar panels out and you've got your batteries, even portable solar panels and a solar generator, it's going to save you so much in the long run over gasoline.
And if you have a well, make sure it's enough to power the well and whatever others. Because a lot of people had generators, haven't ran in years, and they weren't strong enough to run their wells. Because a lot of the wells there are about 400 to 600 feet deep.
Yeah, and I've looked at it, medical supplies. Think about, they're doing pop-up clinics. Jake Drum, he was a vendor here one time. Jake Drum is out around Knoxville. They're setting up portable clinics right now because it's going to be, you saw they were rescuing people off the top of the clinic to the hospital. That hospital is not going to be back in for years. So they're bringing in mobile medical centers to where they can treat people, mobile walk-in clinics. Get on top of your medical supplies. there was, with grindstone, essentially, nobody went out Rambo style. Like William didn't run out and be like, I'm gonna go cut a tree by myself so I can say I did it. It's like you went with two people, no matter what you were doing. Me and one guy, we went to meet Tate. All we were doing was going to meet him. There was two of us, and we had to have comms back to our farm. If we didn't have communications back to the fob, we had to come back and get a dedicated comms guy to go with us. If you were doing anything dangerous, if you were running equipment, running saws, you had to have a medic with you.
Even if you weren't doing that, you had to have a medic with you because you didn't know what you're going to run into.
Yeah. So essentially, when you left the fob, you had a comms guy with you and you had a medic with you. And when we got out, like we went to Poplar, one of the communities, the first things we did, we rolled in, the comms guy was the first dude to unload. He set up communications, made sure we could talk back to the fob. He gave our grid squares and everything. It was like, this is where we're at. Here's the landing zone for the helicopter if we need a medevac. After that, we were allowed to get our saws and equipment out, but not until that guy had done those checks and every person had a radio on them and the comms guy knew this guy's 100 yards over here, this guy's 500 yards over here, this guy's cutting, this guy's running the Bobcat. So then he kind of knew what was going on. Thank God we never had to use that. But that's some of the protocol that was set up. And as people are building groups, build the protocol in there. You know, if you've got a mag and stuff, build that protocol of how we're going to do stuff and standardize stuff. But
you know how many mutual assistance groups fell apart after this disaster? There were lots that fell apart and were immediately out for themselves as soon as this disaster happened. So I don't know how you weed that out. I don't know how you practice that, but figure out something.
yeah, and I'm not talking the people that got their houses washed away in the flood and mudslides and all that. It doesn't matter if you had $1 million bunker underground and $1 million in your barn of preps and everything else. If Mother Nature takes it, it's done for. There's no way to prepare for that. But I'm looking at more the people that are up on the higher ground that aren't going to have power for 4 to 8 months or something. They're not going to have water for 4 to 6 months. Those kind of people, yes, you can prepare for that. That's kind of what I'm looking at as far as the preparedness part. And what I've learned, whatever you've got, honestly, triple it. If you think you're good with 50 gallons of diesel and 50 gallons of gasoline, you need 450. So that's kind of what I saw on that part and really learned. And it struck me. I told Shelly when I got back, I'm like, I'm prepared, but not near as what I need. That's the big lesson I learned.
I don't know. The big lesson I learned is that, like, I don't know that you can ever be prepared by yourself. Like, you have to have that community established. And if you can't build that where you are, then you might want to give serious thought into moving. Like, people move to that part of North Carolina because that's the place that strategic relocation, that, what's the name of the book? Yeah, the guy that talks about strategic relocation, that's where he says to move because there are no natural disasters there. And it's
until
not
now.
until now. But like a lot of these people, if they were on their own, and the ones that were on their own, if they were on their own, they would not have made it. And that's part of the reason, like Jeff Smith is so right when he says why you should prepare for others. Because like this other guy might be a climbing arborist, he might be able to clear the whole community. But if he didn't have food put in his belly, then he's not going to be worth much after day 3. Also, tactical fasting. There is that. Dad has talked about it before. Maybe see how much work you can do without eating, and just get used to practicing that sometimes, so that way you can ration what you have. And then also think of a way, because that was a temperate rainforest that got hit, so nobody valued water because it rained consistently throughout the year. And then that water became contaminated. So think about maybe ways to clean up the water. One awesome way is chlorine dioxide. You can get that from saffrax.com, and it comes in a little tablet, so you don't have to get like the big old pool tablets or anything. Big thing that I took away with was I am crap at communication, like radios, and this kind of, and I'm crap at medical. Kind of leave that up to my wife, who's a NICU nurse. But what if something happens to her? You know what I mean? and then also building community. Those are two major takeaways that I had from this area. And yeah.
And you've got, along with the community part of it, everybody says it. It's like, yeah, I drove 5 hours and I met somebody 5 minutes away. Some of those stories are BS, but Greg, right back here, Greg's wife told me she was at the canning class yesterday, and one of the ladies in the canning class, they said something, they're like, yeah, I'm from Louisville. She's like, I'm from Louisville too. And they got to talking, they're, what are y'all, 5 miles away? About 5 minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes away. It's for real. I've got a testimony right here. It happened.
You found that out for me. Yeah, that guy, there's a guy, we drove 12 hours to finally meet each other, but we lived down the road from each other in Canada, Texas.
So, I mean, it takes stuff like that. A lot of people are introverts. I'll talk to whoever. If you want to come up and talk to me, I'll talk to you. Ken, I'll get to you in just a second. But yeah, find out. If there's a dude standing over there, go over there and talk to him and be like, where are you from? He doesn't have to tell you his exact address, but he can tell you I'm from Morgantown or I'm from wherever. Talk to that guy. Spend this weekend. This is what this weekend's for. You know, if you walk up to somebody and be like, hey, I've got a 1,000-gallon cistern in my house, nobody's gonna be like, you're freaking insane, dude. They're gonna be like, is it poured concrete or is it concrete block? How'd you do it? That's what they're gonna ask. They're not gonna be like, this dude's a loopy, I'm getting the hell out of here. So, Ken.
You and I and Shelley were talking, Paula was there too. One of the things that we need to do at this conference is, if you're from Tennessee, East Tennessee, over here, where we can meet one another. I have not been able to do anything really as far as community because I don't know anybody. And
Well, who's from East Tennessee? Anybody from East Tennessee?
Everybody's looking at you. Nobody knows what you're saying.
Can't we'll find somebody.
Tell me about freesteading.
Yeah, freesteading.com.
I'm on it.
You're on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still haven't found anybody. And I got,
Where in East Tennessee?
Powell area, Oak Ridge.
Move.
What's that?
Move.
No. There's a lot of hills and valleys and so
Yeah.
on like that. It's safe.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, I was going to tell you, I listened to, he's kind of a butthole, but he does have a lot of good information. James Kaufman on World News Report tonight. And when all that crazy stuff went on 2 and 3 years ago in Texas, he told about that vis-a-vis company that can put power anywhere, including Saudi or anywhere, right from Texas. So there's no reason that they can't, you know, they're suppressing all that information.
Tesla did it.
The Tesla stuff, yeah. And those NGOs too, I always listened a long time ago, she doesn't put a lot of stuff out, she's really been targeted a lot. Amazing Power. She talked, and I have books from way back to Katrina. FEMA's been doing this for a long time, and all those NGOs and stuff, that's a Ponzi scheme. You know, for all, they give you a storm, and you know what? If you stop and think about it, on Right Side Broadcasting, a week before that hurricane came, here's Trump out there on one of his rallies a week before, and they were going and showing, just like they are now, that it's like miles to get in, and a week later, there you go.
And I saw something on one of the social media platforms that was talking about crazy stuff from the United States Army. And one of them is a fact they can have a fully functional Burger King anywhere in the world in 48 hours. If that's true, why in the hell have they not done more stuff out there in Tennessee in that affected area?
Done it.
The
Fully
82nd
set up.
Airborne
Full-
makes the claim
full
that they
city.
can be anywhere in the world in 48 hours. But it took them weeks to make it to the other side of the same doggone state. Fort Bragg is the same state. But what do they call it now? It's not Fort Bragg anymore.
Liberty.
Fort Liberty.
The Lucky Bunnies call it Fort Liberty. The real people in this world call it Fort Bragg.
Yeah. So the athletic alcoholics took them weeks to get there.
Any more
fellow running for office, and he said he was fired all the people in charge of Steve.
Yeah.
If he gets in.
I don't know.
those tax dollars, they ought to just stop FEMA, cut it off, cut the head off, lower the taxes, because if I've got more money that I'm not paying in taxes, I've got more money to help you
it's the way it used to be. People would not go to the government looking for their handout. They would go to the church, and the church would help those people. You know, if you had a widow that needed food, the pastor or somebody would find out in that church, and they would take up the collection, and that widow had food. Take care of the widow and the orphan is a big thing. You know, if somebody's house burned down and they were a church member, or really if they weren't a church member, they would take up collections like, we're going to go rebuild this house for these people. It's not like, well, I hope FEMA comes and does something in a couple of years, you know, for me. So cut FEMA off at the knees, reduce our taxes, and then I'll come help you. Patty will come help you. We've got money to do it. That's the thing, and most of the work that's been done are from private individuals that are sitting in these seats right now.
Which also, like, at the risk of pissing everybody off, my wife and I have started going back through the Bible and reading it for ourselves instead of somebody else's interpretation of the Bible. And that's not the part that's here.
Here it comes!
But it stands out to me that throughout the Old Testament, God keeps telling the Israelites that, hey, you do not need a ruler. I've given you the rules. I've given you the laws. Follow them. It makes me wonder if we're even, and also how he can change the hearts of whoever is in charge of these rulers and dictators and stuff. And it makes me wonder if we're even, so the constant argument every election is, I'm voting for the lesser of two evils. You're still giving permission to evil. And I wonder if that's like some sort of, not saying I believe in this, but the enemy does, and karmic debt. I wonder if, like the same thing with the predictive programming, they told you what's going to happen before it happened, so that way they're not liable for what you agreed to do. I wonder if we're even supposed to be participating instead of we're just supposed to start praying. I'm wondering that now.
That's not my path.
You know, Jason just made the comment about take care of the widows, the orphans, and so on like that. The book of James says also that if a person is able to work and chooses not to work, leave him in the dust.
Yeah, and one of the things about the widow, Grindstone's big thing, it's always let's take care of the widow and the orphans. We got intel that there was a widow in a popular community. Her chimney, a tree had fallen down on her house, it knocked the top of her chimney off. And they're like, you do construction, go out there, get what you need, do all that stuff, rebuild her chimneys, and she'll have heat. I was like, okay. Went out, figured everything out. I drove darn near to the Virginia state line to pick up block to fix this chimney. I finally found it, got everything, spent a day doing all that, get back, the truck's loaded the next morning, I drive out there with one of the guys, I back in, and her son comes out, he's like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, I'm here to fix your mom's chimney. And he's like, okay, he's like, why? And I was like, does your mom not want to be warm this winter or what? And I'm like, he's like, Dad died in '99, we ain't used that wood stove since we took it out. He's like, we're using fuel oil now. And I was just like, I was like, okay. I was like, that's cool. I was like, anything else? He's like, you got some metal? I was like, not on me. And he's like, if you can just fix the hole in the roof, we'll be good. And I'm like, okay. So I got one of the guys, I'm like, y'all go pick up some metal and come back and screw this little piece of metal on, we're good. But still, I didn't get to fix her wood stove and her chimney for her, but I did everything in my power to fix that if she needed it. So that's a lot of the stuff that I was doing stuff like that out there. Any other questions? I think we're running over.
Yeah, we're over. It's almost 2:40.